So I went through all my planners and I made a list of all the resources and kind of like the timeline of what it took to teach our late talker how to read. I do want to start off by saying that we had so many failed attempts at teaching our late talker how to read just because he wasn't ready. We had to stop and repeat a lot of the times, and we did take lots of breaks just because he kept showing me that he wasn't ready until he finally was. I did go ahead and make a summary of everything just because I'm not going to remember everything that I just went through. But we are going to go ahead and start in 2023, 2024, when our late talker was 4 years old and he was just starting his pre-kindergarten journey. I did start with the classic teach your child how to read in 100 easy lessons. And to be honest, we had 2 big failed attempts before he finally liked it after like the 3rd round. I did kind of break this down by like month because I'll show you guys this at the end, but it's kind of like a realistic timeline of how we actually did our lessons. So first, in the beginning, I kind of thought we were going to be able to do an entire lesson, but I soon learned that we were going to have to break it down into like individual tasks. And like each lesson, I think it has anywhere from like 5 to 8 tasks. I can't remember. And then like certain things like the handwriting, he just wasn't ready for that. So we completely skipped over that. And we only focused on actually teaching him how to like do the sounds and the reading and the blending and all that good stuff. So for the month of August, we were honestly only able to get through like 4 lessons. So with that, like I said, we were going through certain lessons and we were reviewing a lot of things. And then in week 4, because I'm also going to share with you guys all the different resources that I added to kind of like supplement his journey, in week 4, we went ahead and introduced sight words. So with that, we ended up focusing on a whole sight word for like the whole week, meaning that I did have it in like a sheet protector. So he would have to do it over and over again, like 2 to 3 times a week, depending on like how he wanted to do that. And I do feel that doing that the whole year did make a big difference as well, because we did that for 2 years straight. Now, between August and December, to be honest, we only made it through the first 12 lessons because each month I kept introducing it to him and he just wasn't having it. He wasn't ready. He wasn't really understanding. I am going to tell you that in pre-K, we were still focusing on having him learn the sounds of each letter. And I do feel that that's kind of like where we were bumping heads. How was he supposed to like blend these letter sounds together if he didn't even know what the sounds were looking at the letters, you know? So we went ahead and stopped a few times, and then we kept focusing on having him learn the letter sounds and everything. And then when I thought he understood it, we went ahead and tried again, but I was just getting a lot of pushback that first semester of pre-K. And then even though I was getting like that pushback with the teach your child how to read, we were still going strong with our sight words. So from like August to December, we were still doing our sight words every week, and then teach your child how to read, we were just like sneaking that in every now and then alongside our actual like language arts curriculum. Now in January, I did try to go ahead and introduce teach your child how to read once again, and we went ahead and started by reviewing like the first 12 lessons in January, and then we just stopped because he just wasn't having it. I don't know what it was, but we couldn't get past like the first 12 lessons. And that's like totally fine, because a lot of people say that like I think the first 8 lessons is like really important, and to just go ahead and repeat those because it's introducing like the sounds and everything. So in my head, I'm like, we kept repeating it, doing things over and over again. So in the long run, it's going to help him. But for one reason or another, he's not able to go past it, and I'm not going to like force him, you know? Now in February, I did go ahead and introduce phonics flashcards. That was like week 24 of our homeschool year that year. And that is something that we did go ahead and do every single day again for like 2 years, because I do feel that one, I needed it to kind of like have him expand his vocabulary. So that was like the main reason we used it that first year. And then I was also having him like repeat the words after me as well as the sentences, you know? So that was kind of helping him like with the pronunciation and the speech and everything. And then eventually, like a few years later, like this year now, he's able to read the flashcards all by himself, and he's able to read the whole sentence by himself, compared to how it was in pre-K where I was like saying everything and he had to repeat. Now he just does it all by himself as like independent work. So from February all the way up to I believe May, we were just focusing on sight words and phonics flashcards weekly. And like I said, that's just to help him with like his speech and expanding his vocabulary. And then in May, I went ahead and tried to introduce teach your child how to read once again, but we only did like the first 3 lessons that entire month. And then in June, we went ahead and made it up to like lesson 7, and then we completely stopped after that. But pretty much what we actually like went strong with all year was like those sight words and like those phonics flashcards. So even though we were attempting to teach him like how to read. Even though he wasn't ready, we were still having him work on his speech, the vocabulary, and saying those like tricky phonograms that later on would be helpful. And then a fun fact about our homeschool, even though we do go through a charter school, for some reason I still like to keep the learning going year round. So for like in the month of July, the main focus was just like those phonics flashcards. And then also with like the sight words and the phonics flashcards, once we were done with it, I went ahead and repeated it. So we just cycled through everything, I believe like 2 or 3 times, just because I do believe in like repetition and just keeping that going. Because in the long run, if it doesn't click the first time, it might end up clicking a few tries later. And that's just how I like to believe it's going to work for him, you know, and it kind of did. And then August, before school started, this is like really important because this is right before kindergarten, we went ahead and continued with our phonics flashcards. And then we went ahead and gave Teach Your Child How to Read a 3rd try, and it worked. We ended up completing lessons 1 through 26, like those first few weeks before school started. And then we were actually able to do like the entire lessons, not just like the little tasks. So that's something that we went ahead and started, and he just ran with it for the whole kindergarten year because he completed it by the end of kindergarten. So for pre-K, I genuinely did want to teach him how to read, just because they do say that Teach Your Child How to Read can be introduced to like 4-year-olds, but like you guys heard, he just wasn't ready for it. We had a few failed attempts, but it's totally fine because even though that wasn't working for us, I found other things that did, like our sight words as well as our phonics flashcards. And I do feel that just throwing everything in there and seeing what's going to work, that's honestly how you're going to figure out what the right path is for your little one. And the thing about homeschooling is that we can customize it, and if something works, we can keep going with it, running with it for a few years. Or if it doesn't, you just stop, take a break, and you can go ahead and try again, or you can go ahead and look for something elsewhere, you know? I am going to talk about our kindergarten reading journey, but that's going to be in another video, just in case it's a long one like this, because I have my little notes and that's a full page or 2.